Hello, friends. Well, it is now a couple of weeks after Christmas, a time that is often filled with Christmas parties and dinners and a big Christmas feast on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or both sometimes. I'm guessing I am not the only one who overindulged a little bit during the holidays. It's funny, but as much as we like to talk about keeping Christ in Christmas and Jesus is the reason for the season, I haven't actually met many people who didn't willingly engage in gift giving and lots of eating, or who didn't like to sing along with the more secular Deck the Halls or White Christmas. There is always a little accommodation, I think, to the culture around us, even the commercialism of Christmas. Speaking of people eating a lot, this week's passage of Luke chapter 14 is about a big banquet happening at the house of the leader of the Pharisees on a Sabbath day. Now, there were rules about the Sabbath, rules that the Pharisees were careful to keep in some ways. They certainly talked a big game, one of which was to do no work on the Sabbath. Hence why the religious leaders there were watching to see if Jesus would heal a man that was there for the dinner. They thought of healing as a form of labor or work, so it could be done on the other days of the week, but not on the Sabbath, not on that day. The ironic part to me is that it is very obvious a banquet of this sort would have required servants. According to Luke, Jesus noticed how some guests were expecting to get the seats of honor and they were jockeying for position there, which makes it seem like there was a good number of people who had been invited to this banquet. And the Pharisees certainly weren't doing the cooking or the serving themselves, so there was plenty of work, I think, being done. At least done to benefit them. And they didn't seem to have any qualms about that. But doing the work of healing another man, well, that was not condoned. So there again, we seem to have a group of folks who talk about being religious, but have accommodated themselves to society, or to do something that benefits themselves. And it is making them look like hypocrites, really. So by the end of the passage, Jesus begins talking about things like being humble. And the parable about the great banquet makes me think that these folks have accommodated themselves and the ways of God so much that God is bringing in replacements. And then Jesus says that discipleship, following Him, comes with a cost. If we seek too much to lessen that cost, to make it easier on ourselves, and to accommodate our discipleship to the desires of life, then we've missed, perhaps, what He's about. In other words, if we've lost our saltiness, then we aren't worth much. Our Christianity is just bland, and it won't make much difference to us, and we won't make much difference to the people around us. There are stories in the New Testament about how the early church maintained its distinctiveness and its saltiness. They maintained the Sabbath, or in this case, worshiped on Sundays to remember the first day of the week, because that's the day that Jesus was resurrected, while most of the world around them went on like it was any other day. Sound familiar? They also practiced what they called radical generosity, helping those in need, brothers or sisters in the church who were in need, but on a growing level, the whole community, while many of their neighbors were not so generous. Again, sound familiar for our own time? And they believed in things like the fruits of the Spirit and treating people in a way that showed God's love and grace and care, while living in an empire that was, on the other hand, very competitive and self-serving. Again, does that sound familiar? So I hope that some of this is thought-provoking for you. And please take a look at the questions for this week. So take care, my salty friends. Bye now.